Now, if you look at Africa and where it is now, look at your country, look at Nigeria, look at your state, look at your city. Do you think that righteousness needs to be worked there? Even if you don't want to call it by the name righteousness, you want to call it good governance. Again, if you look through our government, what is the work corruption? And so in a situation where bribery and corruption is the order of the day, we are now encouraging us to study men who worked righteousness. By the way, who told you that you are the poor masses? Who told you? No, I'm not a poor masses. I'm of the kind that subdue kingdoms. That's how I see myself. That stop the mouth of lions. So anytime I'm reading about lions, what I'm thinking, who did they kill today? How can I stop their mouths? So yesterday we began 32 days of governance by making a case for the Bible to be used as a social science text. So why did we choose to start this series with that topic? It is because we are going to be relying heavily on the Bible to draw out concepts that can be applied to our society. And if that is the case, it is only logical and proper that we started or stated clearly why we believe that the Bible can be used as a social science text. Yesterday also we defined social science to mean that branch of science that studies the society and the relationships that exist between the individual members of that society. And we said that from social sciences, courses like economics, anthropology, sociology, etc. emanate. It is the science that studies the society and the relationship or the nexus between the individuals in that society. And we're saying that the Bible could be used to first understand the concepts on the construct of the society, but also to appropriate and define the relationships between those individuals that make up the society. And we said that if you had gone to reduce the school curricula or the coursework of the best schools of government around, whether you're talking about public policy, politics, governance, that if you look around and, for instance, you now pretend that you want to gain admission into any of the schools of government, maybe Harvard, maybe that of Oxford, and then they will send you a catalog of their course, or rather a course outline. And then if you go around sampling course outlines of major schools of government around the world, or school of governance, or school of politics, school of public policy, diplomacy, and all of those things around the world, and if you scour through their course outline, and that you could reduce some of their course offerings and neatly squeeze them into two broad buckets. And we said that the first of those buckets is the abstract conception, and then the second is the concrete. At the abstract level is where ideas are formed. Ideas of concepts like socialism, feminism, equity, justice, ethics, morality, democracy, conservatism, liberalism, etc. are planted. All of the concepts. Now we call them abstract because you cannot hold something tangible that is called good governance. You can't hold something that is called justice. But when it is denied, it is felt. So at that abstract level of things is where the social, or where the solid, or let me use programming language, where the core concept of a man is felt, or where the program, call it the operating system of a man, is felt. And once you capture a man at that abstract level, then you have to a large degree influence his everyday decision. That once someone is captured at that abstract level, once an idea is planted firmly within the system of a man, that you don't have to worry yourself about the everyday decision of the man, that those decisions, those concepts that once planted can begin to guide the everyday decision of that man or woman. And then we now see that the Bible stands toe to toe and presents a rewarding viewpoint on how best a society can be structured. I'll offer two examples. We are offering this recap for those who weren't here with us yesterday. The biblical worldview on marriage and divorce Let us compare that to the results of the secular worldview on perhaps that same subject. Remember, the case we made yesterday was that if we're studying other books as textbooks for understanding human-to-human relations, as a textbook for understanding the society and modeling the society, that the Bible has something to say about that. Whereas the Bible is not a social science text. The Bible has several use cases, and one of the use cases of the Bible in this context is as a social science text. Because if you're going to be studying about a society, the Bible said a lot of things about that. If you're going to be studying about the human-to-human relationships of people within that society, the Bible is also saying something about that. So on the worldview of marriage, you remember that we define social sciences as the study of the society and the relationships that exist between the individuals in that society. And interestingly, marriage happens to be one of the most important long-term, or do I say lifelong, relationships. And when you look at what the Bible says about the society and apply it, about marriage rather, and then you look at what the secular society is saying about marriage and divorce and apply it, and you begin to see varying results. And we're not going to go into meta-analysis. Again, we're going to call up to example parent-children relationship. So if you go to, for instance, Ephesians 6:1-4, it says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, and this is the first commandment with a promise, that it may be well with you and you may live long on the earth. And you fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and the admonition of the Lord." If you go further, Proverbs, I think in verse 26 of 22, says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." So the biblical worldview on parents to children or children to parent relationship is defined. Conversely, there is a secular, and dare I say even in the West, a dominant viewpoint, or call it the abstract, of parents to children relationship. And that is about granting more autonomy, granting more agency, granting more independence, or indeed making the child the object of adoration. So, the secular worldview says the child should have an autonomy, the child should have more control, the child should have more rights, the child is now the center of attraction. It's a worldview and it's producing its own results. But then at the abstract level of things, the Bible also offers worldview on parents to children relationships. And there are other textbooks that offer worldviews on parents. So we say that if you take that worldview and take the biblical worldview, that you could find that the biblical worldview is offering a compelling and indeed a pathway to navigating sensitive human-to-human relationships. And two of them are just one, parent to children, and then that exists between spouses. But then you find on these two examples that I've called up that the road to hell is paved with the best of intentions, and by hell I mean maybe chaos, because each error is usually preceded by an error. Because this thing about evil is quite deceptive, that sometimes it masquerades itself as good. So if one is not careful, one can find himself fighting on the side of error without even knowing it. I'll give two examples. An abuse, or many instances of abuse, exists within the parent-to-child relationship. You will see parents who unfairly punish their children. You see parents who are badly deformed, who unfairly lash out at their children. You also see parents who abuse their children in terms of punishment, especially in Africa, where parents tend to, not all parents, but sometimes parents tend to dump their frustration on the children. And so there are cases of abuse that exist within this relationship. And the secular worldview, in its wisdom, to try to solve this abuse that exists between parent to child relationship, says, you know what, we're going to throw away the baby with the bathwater. We're going to remove all autonomy from you. We're going to take it all away. All that is needed is for the child to come to the class and tell the kids that you punished her or him. And then what happens? The police or the social services can come in on one complaint to begin to infer or in course into that relationship. So again, abuse exists. The secular viewpoint says to cure this abuse, let us take away all the powers and give it to the child. And we're saying that this is tantamount to throwing away the baby with the bathwater. Because if a person has an infectious disease, for instance, say COVID, say tuberculosis, say typhoid is not that, say any of those vulnerable infections or diseases. And so you know that the easiest way to deal with COVID is to kill the person who has COVID. And then COVID will go, because once the host is dead, the viruses will go. Right? Just kill the person and bury him. But we don't want to kill this person. He's someone's father. He's someone's loved one. He's someone's... So you want to target the COVID infection without necessarily killing the person. But people don't want to do this. Instead, they recommend that the best way to pursue a rat is to burn down the house. To correct this abuse that exists in parent-to-children relationship, let us now take away all the agency from the parents and hand it over to social services or hand it over to the child. To correct the abuse that exists within the confines of marriage, let us take away and give everybody, once you are unhappy, jump out. And you begin to see societies that pursue that hedonistic view of marriage, that you can jump out at any time you want. And you begin to see the kind of families it produces, the kind of teenagers it produces, the kind of children it produces. And you compare that to the kind of families or children or things that grow up that emanate from this kind of biblical worldview on marriage. Let me stay on marriage for 2 minutes before moving on, because this is not even our topic for today. We are just summarizing the topic of yesterday. When people preach or use the Bible to endorse or to prescribe or to preach against divorce, they must equally teach the complete truth on that particular subject. You cannot allow men to be abusing their spouses or women to be abusing their spouses, and then you tell them you can't divorce, you can't divorce, you can't divorce. Every Sunday you are drumming it down. But then you're not telling them the part that says, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Because if you're telling the woman, stay in the marriage for better for worse, tell the man, love her as Christ loves the church. If you're telling the man, stay, whatever happens, you must tell the woman, honor the husband as the head of the family. Now, if you want to teach, so on the subject of that sensitive human-to-human relationship, remember that social sciences deal with 1, the society, 2, the relationships within that society. And we're saying that one of the most sensitive relationships is that exists between spouses. And there is the secular or the world viewpoint on that marriage, issue of marriage, that tries to share responsibility, that tries to say, oh no, there is no head, everybody can lead. Or tries to say, oh no, whoever has money should be the head, or whoever has more career exposure should be the head. That's a viewpoint. The biblical viewpoint is there on its own. And we're now saying that toe to toe on any of the ideas that govern our society, that you will find that the biblical viewpoint, not just one, because sometimes people tend to isolate one. When you want to talk about biblical viewpoints on marriage, you have to read the whole Bible and find out the complete truth on marriage and teach it that way. So you can't just isolate one verse and say this is what the Bible is saying about marriage. No, that's not how it works. So this is on the abstract conception of things. And so what we've done with marriage, for instance, is to say, if an abuse exists, throw it away. If a rat enters the house, burn it down. If someone gets infected, kill him immediately. If someone has malaria, cut off his head. Don't bother about chloroquine. It's not going to work. Just cut off the head. And that is what we've done by replacing the biblical viewpoint on, for instance, parent-children relationship or spousal relationships with that is taught by the secular viewpoint. Again, I did say that the road to hell is paved with the best of intentions. And sometimes that the solutions the world prefer for infections within organized entities or infections within structures of the society sometimes tend to torpedo the whole thing. So we've just highlighted two examples to sustain our argument that the Bible should be studied scientifically as a social science text to deduce and to understand vital structures of the society and how to regulate and indeed situate ourselves within the context of the vital relationships that exist among individuals within the society. The conventional schools of governance also deal with concretes. So we said that concrete study of social sciences is the study of real-world events or historical events or real-world figures or historical figures. In America, which is seen as the bastion of democracy, America has produced 45 presidents up to this moment. And some of the notable figures among them, maybe Abraham Lincoln, people like Ronald Reagan, people like John F. Kennedy, are taught. So if you go to contemporary schools of government in America, people still study Kennedy. People still study Ronald Reagan. People still study Abraham Lincoln. People still study past presidents. But they also study people like Nixon of the Watergate scandal. Why are they studying concrete? Concrete is no longer, you are no longer discussing abstract concepts, justice, marriage, these things. You are now taking individuals to say, when this person was in authority, this happened and he reacted this way. And so people are still being taught, even to date, the lives, times, public policies, and indeed all of past leaders. And the hope of concrete level training is to raise a model, to raise a figure, to raise an idol of some sort, to raise a model who embodies all that a leader could be and more. So when you read the autobiographies or the biographies of men like Lincoln, and you begin to study his policies, you begin to study his speeches, the Gettysburg Address, and how he conducted himself all through the war, the goal is to get you to see this man as a model. And once that is firmly planted, you may not know it, but you begin to aspire. Or when you find yourself in similar situation, you begin to do. So today in Nigeria, we have Zik, we have Awolowo, we have Sadoana. Until today, whether we like it or not, these historical figures are still, although Nigeria is not that much, and many of the African countries is not that much big into studying our concrete examples or into studying concrete events. But again, these men still hold sway as to churning out of political leaders. Till today, many people still try to put on eyeglasses that look like that of Awolowo. These are some of the influences of concrete level studies. But there are also those who studied with the view to avoid their mistakes. In Europe, for instance, historical figures abound who are still being studied today. Alexander the Great, for instance, Adolf Hitler, for instance, Napoleon, Marcus Aurelius. Many people know Marcus Aurelius as a philosopher. Maybe you've seen one or two of his quotes on social media. That guy was a king and he ruled a people. Call him a president, and he ruled. And so people still study not just his philosophy, but they also study his everyday governance decisions. So we argued yesterday that the Bible presents contextual details about the lives, about the times, about the public policy, political and governance decisions of political leaders, of government officials, of opposition leaders, of freedom fighters, etc. If America talks about Thomas Jefferson, you can pull out your Bible and read about King Hezekiah. If you're talking about Alexander the Great, you can think of, for instance, David. And we're saying that if our schools are teaching about Alexander the Great, that we should not bet an eyelid to teach our kids about King Solomon, to teach our kids about David. And we're saying that either ways, people can find things in Alexander the Great that will instruct their hearts, and people can find things about David that can instruct their hearts. If you're talking about Marcus Aurelius and his wisdom, you can also talk about Solomon and his wisdom. You talk about just, examples abound. And we did say yesterday that there are about 66 patriarchs, freedom fighters, militants, rulers, judges that provided Israel some form of leadership at one point or the other. Flip it. We did say that there are about 66 patriarchs that provided Israel some form of leadership or the other. And from start of recorded history to exile, about 66. And from coup d'etat to recession to diplomacy to foreign relations to managing dissent to party manifesto, that there is no possible governance outcome that the Bible did not anticipate and provided concrete examples for. And by studying the failures of those who failed and studying the successes of the individuals who succeeded, that the hearts of present and would-be leaders could be instructed. And that is why, on the account of the abstract terms, that the Bible is big on abstracts, and on the account of concrete terms, concrete examples, that the Bible is also big on concrete examples, both the good, the bad, and the ugly, and that there are historical figures that can be studied, and that their decisions can influence leaders of today. So it is on the strength of this summary that we now make journey to discuss the topic faith for nations. And to that, I would like to read one scripture. If you have your Bible, you can go to Hebrews chapter 11. I'm going to read from verse 1 to 3, and then I will jump and conclude on verse 32 to I think around 39. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. For by it the elders obtained a good testimony. By faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen were not made of things which are visible. Now take that jump to 32. And what more shall I say? For the time will fail me to tell of Gideon, and Barak, and Samson, and Jephthah, also of David, and Samuel, and the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, number 1. Worked righteousness, number 2. Obtained promises, number 3. Stopped the mouth of lions, number 4. Quenched the violence of fire, number 5. Escaped the edge of the sword, number 6. Out of weakness we are made strong, number 7. Became valiant in battle, number 8. Turned to flight the armies of the aliens, number 9. Women received their dead raised to life again. Others were tortured, not accepting deliverance that they might obtain a better resurrection. Still others had trials of mockings and scourgings, yes, and of chains and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were torn into two, and were tempted, were slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheep clothes and goat skins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and mountains, in dens and caves of the earth, and all these having obtained a good testimony through faith. Anyone who has achieved consequential success of any kind has had some kind of faith for it. Now, there might be slight semantic disagreements depending on who you ask. As some might call this faith the law of attraction, the law of positive thinking, belief, etc. But regardless of the name we call it, societies, especially functional societies, are built by those who had the faith for it. Because we are told that things are built twice, first in the mind's eyes and then replicated in the natural, that people can hardly build what they can't envision. And so there is this version of Africa I've seen, it's locked in my mind's eyes. I've seen it very clearly. I see it every day. I actually visit there frequently. And my point is that you can't contribute meaningfully to the collective design of a functional society if you cannot hold the picture of a functional society in your mind's eyes. But the problem is this, so you cannot even build a functional society if you don't believe that it can be built. And here lies the problem with developing nations, is that developing nations are usually populated with men and women who, despite having achieved successes in other areas of life, they have accepted defeat and have learned indifference when it comes to nation building. Now, it's not fair to say that we are all failures. No, we've achieved spectacular successes in the music, in sports, in entertainment, in science, in several diverse fields. But despite all these successes, many times, we have accepted defeat when it comes to collective design of the society. We have accepted defeat when it comes to managing the affairs of the collective. So every picture we see around us, whether we are talking about elections, whether we are talking about protests, whether we are talking about government actions, whether we are talking about INEC, whether we are talking about judiciary, whether we are talking about legislature, everything around us, every circumstance aims to distort that mental image and to replace it with something else. So everything we look around at, every news item, every news program, if not interpreted correctly, seem to reinforce a negative view of a hopeless and a hopelessly irredeemable society. And you can't even take an action if you believe that the situation is irredeemably hopeless. And that is why one of the first things that come under attack in developing nations is the faith for nations. Now, this person believes he can do well in his business, and he has shown resilience in that. This person believes he can do well in business despite the economic topsy-turvies. But this person, when it comes to society, he believes no, it cannot be done. And with that belief, he is unable to lift even a finger. And I want to share two personal testimonies that, things, although can seem big, but can still be done, but the picture that it must be done and can be done must be held up at all times. It was COVID-19, and I was living in Anambra, a very small house I was living in. And I was reading the news. Meanwhile, they had been locked down for weeks, or maybe a week or so. And I was reading the news, and I saw in the news that some countries and some cities are offering their citizens palliatives to cushion the effect of the lockdown. Now, people are suffering from COVID-19, but they're also suffering from the economic hardship occasioned by the lockdown. And some responsible governments were in the overdrive trying to cushion the effects and trying to make it easier on their citizens. And I thought, Anambra government is not doing anything about this. And so what are you going to do about it? Well, I can force them to do something about it. And I wrote, and I spread it around. And in less than 30 minutes, one commissioner within the government called me, Chima, this thing you said, what do you really mean? And I began to explain. After the explanation, he says, hold on, I'll call you back. Didn't call back. And after a while, another high functionary within that government says, now that you've said we want to do palliatives, how do you even identify the vulnerable ones in the society? I said, You can use this formula, but the best is to merge both of them. You can generate the leads from here, you can generate the leads from here. Either of the two, cross-reference and cross-merge your lists, and you have, the most vulnerable part of the population. And then afterward, the first person called back and says, okay, this is my response to what you wrote. In less than 2 days, the governor of the state mounted the rostrum and announced palliatives, and indeed implemented, although haphazardly, some of the things we wrote and discussed with his officials. Now, if after reading that news, I said, this government, will they hear? I will not even have the energy to take even a slight action. Again, we did the same thing during the census. Nigeria was about to have a census, and we looked at all the data, and we saw the amount of harm Nigerians will suffer on the account of that census. But already, more than 2/3 of the money for the census had been released, and it was less than 40 days to the census. And we began to ask the government to postpone the census. And we insisted that the government cannot be allowed to hold the census, and we made our arguments. And we started taking flights city to city, boardroom to boardroom, convincing people, shouting on the media. Eventually, I got someone that works with the president, former president, and he says, this thing you just told me now, can you write it down? He says, of course, I can write it down. And I wrote, the next morning I have the letters before him. I said, I'll help you distribute these letters. And I didn't even write to the governor. I wrote to someone that knows the governor, and that someone took the letter and went and read it with the governor. And so that morning I was called to say, this guy is going to discuss this your thing with the governor. And that day, exact same day, the governor called a press conference to say, my state is not part of this census. And out of our 10-point recommendation to the state government, they implemented 4. And some of those 4 recommendations were some of the things that led to the postponement of the census. Now, why did I share these 2 stories? Because every time you believe that situations are irredeemably hopeless, you cannot even do the bare minimum that's required of you. And so we know that things cannot move until people move it. At the collective level, no, they can't change. At the societal level, no, they can't change. The roads will not fix themselves. All the bad things you see happening will not fix themselves. We know this to be true. And we know that we do have some role to play. Is it going to be easy? No. But then we don't even believe that it is doable. Therefore, there is no incentive to act. And so since we don't believe that we can make progress, we don't contribute to making of the progress. That means that this is a problem. And the only solution to the problem, the only person who can possibly solve this problem believes that it can be solved. And that is how we recycle years and years of underdevelopment. So how do you get this kind of faith for nations? By studying those who had it. For what more can I say? Hebrews 11:32. What more can I say? For time will fail me to tell of Gideon. They have started mentioning names. You remember what we discussed yesterday? Concretes. To tell of Barak, to tell of Samson, to tell of Jephthah, to tell of David, to tell of Samuel, and the prophets, and now see what they did. But before we even get to what they did, the best way to contact this kind of faith for nations is to look at the lives of people who have had it and begin to study them. We mentioned that there are about 66 kings, but those are just the kings of Kingdom of Israel. There are about 40 hidden kings, about 40 of them, about 40 hidden kings. And then apart from the kings, there are people like Jephthah, There are people like, not Jephthah, Esther. There are people like Ruth. There are people like Obed. There are people like Mordecai. There are people like, there are other history, Ezra, Nehemiah. There are people who led the rebuilding of the temple, Zerubbabel. There are a lot of them. Then apart from studying those guys, you can also find that there are people, they were not kings, but they influenced public policies within their time. So time will fail, according to the writer of Hebrews, to mention these people and what they did. Now it's important to look at what they did because we need it in Africa. One, they subdued kingdoms. And this is the topic that we're going to be treating tomorrow. Because you cannot influence, you cannot rule a kingdom you have not subdued. And this is why many good men don't end up in power, because they don't know the idea of subduing kingdoms. So we're going to treat this topic. I invite you to come back tomorrow. Tomorrow's class is going to be empire. What we have done yesterday and today is already empire, but tomorrow's class, I promise you, is technical session on how to subdue nations. There are 7 critical components that is needed before you can take any nation, any territory. 7. And we're going to take time. So tomorrow is more technical. And I'll encourage you to come early tomorrow. Come with your notes, come prepared. Because we're going to be dealing about subduing kingdoms. But subduing kingdoms is not just what they did. The Bible says also that they worked righteousness. Now, if you look at Africa and where it is now, look at your country, look at Nigeria, look at your state, look at your city, look at local government. Do you think that righteousness needs to be worked there? Even if you don't want to call it by the name righteousness, you want to call it good governance. Again, if you look through our government, what is they work corruption? They work bribery and corruption. And so in a situation where bribery and corruption is the order of the day, we are now encouraging us to study men who worked righteousness, who obtained promises. There is a promise for Africa. There is a promise for Nigeria. There is that goal, there is that vision, there is that thing that is yearning in the hearts and minds of the people. And we have to obtain it. There are promises hanging. Giant of Africa, there are many aspirational things about not just Nigeria, but many African countries. But the promises are yet to be obtained. And the people that want to obtain this promise must look at the lives of those who have before us obtained promises. They stopped the mouths of lions. You see, the lion will not release the lamb because David is a good man. Their mouths have to be stopped. The political lions tearing away at our resources, their mouths have to be stopped. But there is a technique, there is a knowledge, there is an empowerment. Who quenched the violence of fire, devouring everything they touch? This is described. In fact, it's as if they just wrote this with Africa in mind. Politicians, everything they touch, they devour it. They touch the economy, they devour it. They touch the healthcare, devour it. Everything they touch, they damage it. They touch the economy, damaged. They touch international relations, damaged. They touch infrastructure, damage it. And there's a technology to quench the violence of fire. Look, once it is fire, it will consume everything in its wake, except it is stopped. But you know what? If you are trying to do this, a sword will come after you. They will try to kidnap you. They will try to kill you. But these men have also learned how to escape the sword. Africa needs this kind of men. And the goal of Boqer School of Government, this is not just training. that we bring men from here who can obtain promises, who can work righteousness, who can subdue kingdoms, who can stop the mouth of lions. It's not enough to be good and then lose at the polls to people who you know that are not good. It's not enough to have the knowledge of governance and then people who have zero to nothing to offer are running the system. And how do we even believe that we can do this? By studying men who have done it. But wait a minute, when you have seen all these spectacular accomplishments, when you have seen how they worked righteousness, obtained promises, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the... When you've seen all that they did, you will begin to think that these are superhumans. Until the Bible goes on to tell you that these were all weak men made strong. All of them. I've heard people say Nigeria is irredeemably hopeless. Well, you are not the first person that said that. Before you came on board, Moses said the same thing. All you had to do is to look at the recruitment of Moses and his argument with God about whether or not he was qualified. If you talk about inferiority complex, Moses had it. You talk about self-doubt, it was full. Moses had it pressed down, shaking together. Your inferiority complex is small compared to that of Moses. They were all weak men made strong. All of them, bar none, were weak men made strong. You need to read about Jephthah, and that's why we have lined up in our classes. We're not going to, in fact, by the 7th class, if God gives us the grace, we're going to, what I wanted to do is to unlock a little bit and give you the template that you can unlock the rest for yourself. So we're going to give a template that highlights these 66 entities and how to study them. The 66 of them, how to study them, where you can find their stories, and how you can milk things out of their stories. My goal is that when you're reading the Bible, you are not just seeing a way to go to heaven and, not get into hellfire. That you're seeing that the Bible has wisdom that you can apply to your society. That the wisdom that if a farmer reads the Bible, the farmer can find wisdom that you can apply in the farm. That if a politician reads the Bible, the politician can find wisdom that you can apply in politics. That if a public policy person reads the Bible, you can find things from there that you can apply in the public policy space. That if a doctor reads, you can find something there that you can apply in the medical field. So Jephthah, self-doubt, an illegitimate son. Gideon was introduced as mighty man of... You need to see where he was hiding the day they introduced him as mighty man of valor. So for those of you who are here, who look at all that is going on in Nigeria today, and a lot is going on, who look at what is going on in Zambia today, and a lot is going on, who look at what is going on in Africa today, and a lot is going on, and you feel so defeated, feel so weak, feel so unequal, feel so, in the words of the Bible, you feel like grasshopper in the eyes of our politicians. You have good company. All you need to do is to begin to read the story. Begin to read the story of weak men made strong. Who became valiant in battle and who turned to flight the armies of the alien. I will stop at the first half, but in class 4 we'll read the second half of this testimony. Class 4, not 3. Tomorrow we'll continue from here. And Elijah, according to James 5:17, was a man subject to like passions like we are. And he prayed earnestly that he might not rain, and he rained not on the earth for the space of 3.5 years. And he prayed again, and the heaven gave rain, and the earth brought forth her fruit. And when I look at this, I say, and David was a man like me. Rudy, poor farm boy, and Jephthah was like a man like me. And Moses was a man like me. And Deborah was a woman like us. And Joseph, a man of like passion. And Jephthah and Joshua, When you read the accounts of weak men made strong, there is something that it does to you. You see them in their you becoming vulnerable, you will see that these men were more vulnerable than you were. And so when you begin to see the stories and their vulnerability and what they eventually accomplished, don't just read their end of the story where they became heroes. No, read how they were recruited, what they were doing before they were recruited, and see where they are. Some of us are even better than them. Better education, better exposed. Some of the battles they fought were irredeemably hopeless. At least the ones we are fighting, it looks like it, but sometimes it has not gotten that bad compared to some of the situation. But these are men. And so when people now compliment me, because I think I turned 32 the other day, and I was reading some of the messages people were sending me, and then people are complimenting me, oh, you're doing so well at such a young age. I said, compared to what? Of course, I don't tell them. The best I can do is to politely say thank you. But it gets me annoyed. Really. Because I ask myself, what are you comparing me to? Who are you comparing me with? So you're comparing me to the average man on the streets. No, that's not a very good example. At 32, Jesus was almost completing his ministry. At 32, David is now celebrating 15 years of killing Goliath and is now 2 years as a king in Hebron at 32. Let's come back to Nigeria. Some of our independence fathers, the people who fought for Africa's independence, they were not using, they didn't have gray hair and walking stick. No, they were quite young. But today, the definition of youth has eluded us. And you see a 45-year-old man telling himself that he's a youth. And we are wasting our lives. So what did I say? That compared to what? Because I have models. I have David I pattern my life after. I have a benchmark in Jesus. I have a benchmark in Joshua. I have a benchmark. These are people I run my life. Not the average man. And I'm saying this to you to say that everything around us, including the people around us, are designed to keep us with a low mental picture. And that is why we must have new benchmarks. That is why we must have new role models. That is why we must find. I'm going to ask us to do this exercise. Take your time. This is not an exercise that you will finish in one day. But take your time, study the Bible, and find one biblical character that mirrors what you are trying to do. Now, it is arrogance for you to assume that what you are trying to do has never been done. It's arrogance. Now, it might not be to the exact specifics, but you will see something that can model what you're trying to do. And we're saying that you can find some of those models in the scriptures. Now, the exercise for today, write it down and give it the next 2 weeks to finding out. Find a scriptural figure that closely mirrors. Like, I'm assuming that we all know what we came here to do. We have found our destiny. We know why we're here. And I'm saying that in your life's peculiar journey, that if you look through the Bible, you read the story of Jephthah, Jethro, Moses, Simeon, this, that, the other, Esther, Mordecai, all of them, the Bible gave an account of more than 1,000 individuals. Some of them detailed, some of them very light on details. But there is no how you can study these 66 kings as a politician. You will not have all the real scenarios that can play out in the government house. And there's no how you can look through, you will not find. So the exercise for today, write down if you're writing. Find a biblical character that best resonates with your mission and study him or her in-depthly. See their mistakes, see their battles, see the strategy, see their weaknesses, study. Have a picture. That is the thing. Because they hold up the picture of Abraham Lincoln and people aspire to become like him. And there have been many great people on the account of studying Abraham Lincoln became great. They hold up the picture of J.J. Okocha and people like Messi can come up. So you need to have models. And I'm saying that if you don't have good role models, at least the Bible can supply you with some. And the account, you can be sure that the account was not rigged. Because the thing with autobiography and biography is that sometimes these autobiographies are written so that people can, look good. Some of the autobiographies, especially of Nigerian politicians, are not exactly true. And so if you are reading those autobiographies, yes, there is wisdom to glean from them. And I read that a lot. But then sometimes the stories may be padded a little bit to make the person, look better and nicer than he is. But the thing about scriptures is that nobody's interested in making you look good or bad. And so that's why they will tell you about all the exploits of David. And they will also tell you that he killed his friend because of his wife. Get new role models. If you're struggling with faith, find men of faith and study them. Our parents learned helplessness. Our peers learned helplessness. I want to make a couple of points before we open up the line for questioning. You are struggling to have faith for nations. You're struggling to have faith for your assignments. You're struggling to have faith for your assignments. Even the small one that you manage to have, you allow it to be stolen. If I were to recommend to you, I would ask you to stop all the forwarded as received messages. All these messages, see how much they stole. See how many people they killed in Zamfara today. See this. And all those analyses that tell you, see how many cars, our politicians are wicked. These are, all of those things, stop, if I were to recommend to you. Now, what that does to you is that it presents you an information in a way that is destructive. Because it presents an information to tell you the politician, although wicked, is all powerful. And then you are the poor masses that is helpless. And when you begin to see analysis on the television, even with good governance advocates, they keep telling Buhari did this, Tinubu did that, Wike did this, they don't care about the poor masses. By the way, who told you that you are the poor masses? Who told you? No, I'm not a poor masses. I'm of the kind that subdue kingdoms. That's how I see myself. That stop the mouth of lions. So anytime I'm reading about lions, what I'm thinking, who did they kill today? How can I stop their mouth? Don't read the news. Oh, the lion has killed again, this time in Boqer. They've done as they used to. They've done it again. Every of those news items that disempower us, stop. They say no knowledge is a waste. This one is actually wasting your creative energy. Stop. They're showing you things that every day, the bad things our politicians did. They tell you this, they tell you that. It can never be well with our politicians. The thunder that will fire our politicians that are still manufacturing. Stop. It can satisfy your emotion, but in exchange, it takes away your creative energy because the news keeps telling you, oh, there is this all-powerful person in government and there is this all-weak you as the poor masses. We are of those that subdue kingdoms. You might not believe this to be true, but I want you to stay on this longer and then it will start. Your mental picture will begin to change. So when I look at Aso Rock, I start asking myself, how many years does it take to get to Aso Rock? If I look at the National Assembly, I start plotting the graph. What does it take to change this law? What does it take to change this thing? Who should I talk to? Who should I write to? And at this stage of my life, I influence public policies through others. Another stage is about to come. So I have a thing and I look through which commissioner is responsible and I do a quick email and things get sorted. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but some of the things we wrote from this very room is about to be enrolled as part of the Constitutional Amendments Constitution of Nigeria. Who would believe that from this small room we can affect the Constitution? Or we can even at least get our lawmakers to debate it. We are not the poor masses. We are not. Once you believe that you are the poor masses, you have taken away the agency to act. That means what you're doing is that you are sick, and you are, at least at the governance level. You're suffering from insecurity, suffering from the weak naira, suffering from all the maladies and all of the associated pains of bad governance. But the person who has the drug is the enemy who made you sick. That's what the news does to you. So instead of reaching out to take the drug, to take the cure for this malaria, you now say, oh, but Wike is holding it. Oh, Tinubu is holding it. What can we do if not to die? We are not of them that perish. There are those who did something, and there are those who something was done to on the account of the faith they had. So when we talk about men written here, there are two categories. There are those who did something, and there are those who something was done to. Both realms are legal tenders. I will not explain this point because it features in one of the classes. First, I've encouraged you to stop all the leakages of faith. You don't have yet enough faith for nations. You don't have yet enough faith to impact public policies. You don't have yet enough faith for running for office. You don't have. Block your ears to all negative news. Block. Since 2017, people will be surprised to hear this. I don't watch television. I don't. From at least 2019, I don't receive any forwarded as received nothing. None. I don't. That's how we can function with because everything around me is trying to discourage me. Oh, they will kill you. Oh, they will do this. So it's of no good use listening to all of that. So what I've done is I've selected 5 problems I can solve per time. And the 5 I'm working on now is 1, electoral reform. 2, addressing insecurity in the middle belt. 3, mobilizing broad participation in the democratic process, which is also part of what we are doing through this class, mobilizing broad participation in the democratic process. 3, regional advancement of the Southeast. And 4 is on credible census. These 5 for credible census, these are the 5 public policy issues I'm working. Now, any single one of them, we can break down the specific goals we want to achieve. And they are very difficult tasks on their own. And I need the energies of 50 men to be able to accomplish them. Now that I don't have all the energies I need, why do I now have to start worrying myself about Wike and Fubara fighting? About they are trying to build a new mansion of 80 billion. Why do you need those news? Stay on your lane. If you're working on healthcare, everything you're reading, because there's no man, no matter how powerful you are, even David, no man in the Bible solved all the problems of his time, including Jesus. So there are specific problems you are created to solve. If you found out those problems, if it is education problems, focus on news concerning education. Stop pushing yourself into insecurity, because by the time you read 10 news items on insecurity, your energy level to address the issues of education has dropped. So if you are not actively working on stopping politicians from buying big houses, stop reading about all the houses they bought. Stop. It's not going to help you. That knowledge is actually a waste. It's going to waste your energy. Because the news can be overwhelming as you are trying to manage your small. I'm using education as an instance now. You are trying to write a law that impacts the school curricula in your state. That's what you're going to give the next 5 years of your life to. But instead of focusing on that, you are now reading, oh, Wike bought SUV, oh, this happened, oh, the other happened. By the time you finish aggregating all the negative news that happened, you will not know when you forgot about the small law that you are trying to change. By 2025, if God gives us the grace, we're going to be attacking a particular law, and our goal is to attract additional 280 billion in funding for primary and early secondary school students. About 280 billion in funding. And you can unlock 280 billion by unlocking 2 aspects of the law. Just 2. Just 2. There's the UBEC law that talks about counterpart funding. If you can just tweak a little bit, you release additional 80 billion. There's another one that talked about the percentage. If you can tweak it a little bit, you unlock 200 billion. So by targeting a specific law, if we achieve it, younger school, I don't even have to know these kids. But if we achieve this, we unlock 280 billion in additional funding for school kids. Now, some of the money will be stolen, of course. But what can 280 billion do for Nigeria's young people? A lot. So I'm going to focus my energy on that law. Who do I have to talk to? Who is the head chairman committee on this? Who is the Senate committee chairperson on this? Who is the House of Representatives? How can I approach him? How can I get his number? Who knows him? How can I present myself? How can I make my argument compelling? How can I craft this into a draft legislation so that when I see him, the discussion becomes easier to have? How can I? Those are the things. If I don't focus on that and I'm focusing on other things that are not part of my mandate, by the time I'm done, I may not have the energy to focus. So my point is stop all the leakages. And number two, it will not be easy. It will not be easy. Look at what the Bible talked about. Look at, I need you to see this, because if we just read it and pass, it's as if it's easy. Because it's round story. This is not story of a dead man for me. They say, who through faith subdued kingdoms? It's tomorrow. I encourage all of us, come back tomorrow. So you see what goes on to subdue a kingdom. 7 critical things that you must have. If you don't have them, forget it. But the good thing is that weak men can be made strong to have those 7. Subdue kingdoms, worked righteousness, obtain promises, stopped the mouth of lions. You think the lion was happy with David when a lion has caught a lamb and the young boy confronted it? You think they were happy with Daniel? You think they were happy? If that stone did not hit Goliath where it hit him. There are some battles you go into. There's only one outcome, either kill or be killed. And many of these men encountered such difficulties. So you see the difficulties people encountered just to stop the mouth of lions. When you think you just vote and paste posters, and the people who have held Nigeria at the jugular will now run away and Nigeria will now live happily ever after. You think you have this good idea of solving a particular problem, and then you write one article and everything goes on happily ever after. No. James chapter 1 verse 6 says, and let him ask in faith without doubting. For he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, driven and tossed by a wind. For let that man suppose not that he will receive anything from the Lord. So, if the picture in your mind's eyes is impacted by circumstances, you are not there yet. You may be on your way, but you're not there yet. No, the picture has to be firm as we begin to conclude. If young people come out to protest, say answers, people are talking, the revolution, revolution. If they open fire and kill them, they will say, Nigeria can never be redeemed. So their opinion is guided by circumstances. If a man called P2B come out and they say, will he win, will he not win? And they see social media, that social media is already ablaze. They see, he held a rally and the whole city was shut down. And all of a sudden, they have faith in Nigeria. If the election becomes stolen, for you to confirm to you that thing they had was not faith, it will not. So if it is impacted by circumstances, my point is to tell you that it's not faith. It can be called other things, but not faith. If young people come out to protest end bad governance, people are saying, Nigeria, if the end bad governance is shut down. So if people's response to issues, or if the picture in your mind of your country, if the picture you have in your mind of Nigeria, now what I'm describing might be futuristic to some of us. Because for us, some of us, the pictures in our mind's eyes is certain what Nigeria will look like. It's very certain. But if the picture in your mind's eye is that of defeat, the goal of this class is to replace it. And how do we replace it? By you looking at alternate pictures. People who are being... Nigeria is not the worst country for God's sake. It's not. Although you're buying, even if you read ordinary history books, this Germany you see today, I tweeted it maybe like 6 months ago. You needed 1 billion, what's that currency again? Dutch mark. 1 billion to buy a plate of food. That's the extent of the recession. This Germany that people are killing to get visas to. And this was happening in less than 100 years. If you read the autobiography of Erich Bonhoeffer, you will read it. You will see how much they spent buying food. If you read, I hope you're beginning to see things. For instance, when the Bible says that, in Kings, I can't remember the exact place now, where the prophet says, by this time tomorrow, a bushel of wheat will sell for this amount. And the other person says, no, it's impossible, even if God were to open windows of heaven. Look at what had happened to them, that women were beginning to eat their children. You don't think it is recession? You don't think it's inflation? Inflation in Nigeria, is it bad? Yes. Has it gotten to the level of people cooking their own children and eating it? Yet they came out of that recession. How did they come out of that? It's something that our policymakers need to study. Why is the subject of faith important, finally? I'll ask you to close your eyes and imagine the picture of a governor who believes that the problems of the state cannot be solved. Picture a civil servant who believes that the problems in the ministry he or she serves in cannot be solved. Picture a lawmaker who thinks that the situation is hopeless. Picture a citizen who believes that he doesn't have any agency whatsoever, who believes that the situation is hopeless. Now, faithlessness takes away from you all the energy that is required to engage. Sometimes you have to spend some time there before you obtain the promise. But without that faith, you will not even engage. Even if you engage at the slightest mention or the slightest opposition, because the faith falters, the faith then falters. So you see why our governors sometimes steal. I'm not going to mention names, but I've engaged at the highest levels. Some of the work I do, again, they are not publicized because there is no need. And by the mercies of God, especially in the last 7 months, I've met key political leaders. And sometimes when I ask them, so Your Excellency, what are you doing about this? Because I'm not coming to beg you, why are you not doing this? If they open their mouths off camera, you see how hopelessly hopeless the people in government are. Don't mind the SUVs, don't mind the big cars, the big houses. Sometimes His Excellency is not excellent. That you are honorable does not mean that you now have all the wisdom. That you won one election does not mean... Now, winning an election, as difficult as it is the easiest part of the job. Doing that for which you are elected is now the difficult. That's why many people can win elections, but they can't impact the society. Because when they get in there, they feel overwhelmed. And picture a man whose picture in his mind is changing by circumstance. So in the first 2 or 3 months of becoming elected, he pushes, and he gets pushed back, and then he relaxes. That's how 4 years is gone. Meanwhile, in the 4 years, a new picture of stealing is implanted. Since you cannot change the system, better profit from it. Since you cannot try to change it, nothing happened. So either you profit from the situation, or a governor who believes that he cannot make any impact will end up stealing. That's what I'm saying. That if you don't plant pictures firmly in your mind and you find yourself in positions of responsibility, when you go at it once, twice, thrice, and the situation refuses to yield, because between you and the situation, one person must yield. And if you are the person that will yield, after you have yielded, you will now be recruited to do the opposite. So no soldier in time of battle can be at ease. Either you are fighting the cause for which you were trained, or you are fighting on the enemy territory. So a governor can want to change his state, and when he comes, the civil society is against him, the media is against him, the traditional institutions is against him, even the people he's trying to help does not understand him. But there is no money there, the federal government is against him, the state house of assembly, the laws, the civil servants are not even doing what they are supposed to do. By the time he loses, I'm just telling you the story of a governor I know. The presidency against him. There's no funding. The last governor borrowed money. The civil servants are not doing their work. The traditional rulers against him. No money to pay salaries. Everything is against him. He now gives up. Less than 6 months into a 4-year tenure. The best he can do is to start buying houses in the UK. The problems he genuinely wanted to solve, he has given up completely. So when you are writing policy proposals, he doesn't even have the energy to engage again. That is why your mind must be firm. Not when you get there now. So without faith, without believing that it can be done, one may not even try at all. Or when he encounters the challenge, we will see tomorrow when we discuss thrones and dominion. That's what we're discussing tomorrow. Why good men lose the game of power. So without faith, men can crumble under the weight of opposition and challenges. So 2 responses, either give up or join in fighting or profiting from the ongoing madness. And in Africa, we have faith, but we channel it to the personal good. We have faith for our cars, we have faith for marriage, we have faith for... But I'm now beginning to say that faith we have for it is the same kind of faith. We can now channel it because we know how to make babies, miracle babies. We know how, and I'm not against all of them. We know how to make miracle monies. We have miracle jobs, and I keep receiving miracle things in my life. I believe that. But I'm saying that we have cracked, so we're not going to stop that kind of faith because we need this kind of faith. But I'm saying that we have learnt that kind of faith to make rain for the personal resources. I need marriage, how do I make it happen? I need a job, how do I make it happen? I need this, how do I make it happen? We now have the faith enough for that. Then we now have to channel to start having faith for the collective design of the society. This is where I will stop and invite people to send in their questions, your comments, and your contributions.
Thank you, sir, for this class. Quickly on my own, let me say the highlight of what I learned today is that Jesus himself did not come to solve all the problems in the world. He came to fulfill his own assignment. We end up doing nothing. We need to find the one that is our assignment and block out all the distractions to focus on it. I think it's one of the things God has been speaking to me from last year into this year. And I'm just starting to really begin to narrow down on what I need to do, and the result is coming in faster than I expect. And I believe if we also, like you said with your last statement, channel that towards our desires for the country, we'll still get the same result. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, no one person, in fact, the assignment God gave you, sometimes you will need 10 lifetimes to achieve it. I have read, I've studied these figures back to back by the mercies of God, and I see their pain. For instance, in one of those times, Moses came to God in one of their conversations, and he says, kill me today, just don't allow me to live, kill me today. What did I do that you would tell me to carry these people on the back like a mother carries his child? What did I do to deserve this kind of punishment? Kill me, for the frustration of a leader. Moses' assignment was to move them from Egypt to promised land, and it took everything from him. See Joshua's assignment. Did you know that it was David that captured Jerusalem? From Joshua to the 17 judges, before Samuel ordained Saul. Even Saul did not take Jerusalem. It was David. So imagine that God had also asked Moses, take them to promised land, take all the land there and build the city and build the temple and build everything. It wasn't until Solomon that the temple was built. If you now fast forward to Nehemiah's time, the temple had been burnt down, the walls had been broken, some people had to rebuild the temple, some people have to rebuild the wall. So God cannot be that unkind to burden you with all the problems of Nigeria. One problem alone is enough to crumble you without being helped of him. So see what Moses did. See all the supernatural powers available to Moses. And he was suicidal. See what Elijah had to confront, but he was suicidal. See what Jeremiah had to confront. Anyway, let me not say just deliver. But Jeremiah was always weeping. In fact, he's always in this relationship with God. He falls in and out of love with God. He says, I will not do it again. I will not do it again. Yeah, tomorrow he will still do. On education alone, the volume of the problem that has to be solved before Africa can take hold of the educational sector and chart the course for the destinies of 8 million people, citizens. And one person can't do it. That's on education too. For education, God has to recruit an army. For healthcare, an army. For economy, an army. Different sectors. So you must find your niche. And then now that you've found your niche, you must play and find your specific assignment within that niche or specific sets of assignments within that niche and channel all your creative energies towards them. So because if you are fighting on all grounds, you are not fighting on any ground. Because that's also something that you see with our Twitter influencers. Today, thousands killed in Borno, they are experts on thousands being killed in Borno. But tomorrow, there is there is cholera outbreak in Nasarawa. They've left the people who were killed in Borno. He didn't find closure on. He's now on cholera outbreak. But next tomorrow, something else trends. He now leaves this one. So in a year, he has tweeted about 280 issues. Didn't find closure on one. But there are some, like people in Boqer school, who see out of all the problems of my community, because one community can have issues with borehole, can have issues with unwanted pregnancy, can have issues with school dropouts, can have issues with infrastructure, can have issues with electricity. You can't solve all. Even in government, even if you're elected the governor of a state today, that's why people have agenda. What are your priorities? If I become the governor today, I'm not going to try to solve the problems of my state, all of them. No one can do that. Yeah, as a governor, you have to give attention to all the sectors. But there are some sectors that you know, this is why I'm here. If this is the only thing I achieved in 8 years, it would have been worth it for me. You devote your all to those ministries and departments. While you delegate others, but this particular one that is your assignment, this is why I'm here. In 8 years, I must have solved this. You focus on those. Because there's no how you can look like to a state like your own state and solve all the problems there. That is how the same way it is in the matter of destiny. Nobody is situated to solve all the problems. Choose the battles you want to fight. And make sure you are fighting the ones that you are sent to fight. If you are sent to fight the Northern Army, let us not find you drawing your swords at people in the South. Yes, I'll take the next question from here. Matt, is it Matthew? I see a Matt or Matthias. Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Chima. The section was so exhaustive and I so much loved the section. As a matter of fact, when I joined, you were mentioning the recap of yesterday's class, and you did mention, analyzing using the scriptures, and I love the fact that we are using the scriptures, to also as a reference to, understanding politics, and I love that so much, so that I'm also going to be asking, is it that is going that can also give that can be used, to analyze politics as as regards social sciences as a key reference material. Because I know there will be definitely some other religions that are also on the platform. The Quran is if not a good material for social science. When we talk about some practices of traditionalists, then another thing that also came to my mind that I don't know if that was said yesterday, as regards the course content, so one can know the courses that going to achieve in these activities.
Thank you so much. I deeply appreciate your kind words. You asked two questions. One is for the course outline. Yeah, the course outline, what we did at the introductory level of the class yesterday was to do an oral breakdown or like a synoptic overview of what we're going to achieve in the 32 days. But then we did not break them down by topics. But what we're going to share by the 7th class is to, because we have laid enough background to share that material by the 7th class, is to give a study guide. So it becomes like a study guide that will help us identify some of the concrete and some of the abstract things that we are going to be doing for the 32 days. But I will encourage you to, if you can, when the recording is out, try to catch up on the previous class. That will give you a more, bird's eye view of the goals that we've set out to achieve in these 32 days. And you asked about Bible. So there is a topic that we're going to teach that is talking about secularism of state, for instance. How do you situate what we are teaching in a multicultural society? How do you situate some of the things we are saying in a quote-unquote secular state? What does it even mean for a state to be secular? What does it mean for a society to be multicultural? And how does these worldviews hold up within the context of other worldviews? That's what you're asking. And I will not go into the details because while I will not go into very deep details is this. One is that some of the claims I might make may require time to fully explain, and that time we clearly have run out of for today's class. So having said that, I invite you to participate in the class where we will teach this thing we are teaching in a multicultural society and what we are saying in a pluralistic society. And what does it even mean for a society? Is there something as a secular state? If you ask me now, I'll tell you that the answer is no. But the time for me to get you to where we are, to where you can agree or see that the answer is indeed no, is quite a long length period of time. So I will invite you to stay back and participate in that class. So two key things from today: find a model and don't leak energy for the nation. Thank you, Matthias.
Hello, thank you so much. I have a very quick question. I know I spelled some classes request for it, but tonight's session was really packed. I'd really love to still go over it and still take one. So I was wondering if it was recorded at all.
Yes, by the mercies of God, today's class was recorded. I will make available by the mercies of God the recordings of all the classes, and I'll try to expedite it.
At least let me get to ingest it. Like I said, all that you poured out today was really, really rich, and I just knew that it would be nice the way I take lectures, just to play it back, unpack it, and bring it back in words, and it's just one more time with people like at the gym or just something random. But yeah, thank you. I'll be back, and we should keep it somewhere.
That's all right. I'll be looking forward to that. Thank you. Thank you so much. Mr. Bolarin, yes, you have a question.
Oh yes, not really a question, just education towards this, and also to ask to join Oyedamola requesting for the audio, because sincerely I could you know, related for you.
Okay, okay, beautiful. So I'll encourage you, if you're on Telegram, follow at Boqer School on Telegram. We have a Telegram channel and we also have a Telegram group. The channel is dedicated solely for promoting or pushing our audio content. And then we are on music streaming platforms. So do you use Audio Mac or what is it called now? Spotify.
Okay, I just downloaded it recently.
Okay, so if you're on Audio Mac, okay, look for Boqer School on Audio Mac or Spotify. So our messages are there. Then put the notifications on so that once we publish those things, you can get notified. Is that all right? As we conclude this class, I want to invite each and every one of us to take some of the things we are discussing here seriously and ponder what these people are saying. Is it true? Does it apply to my life, and in what ways? If it is true, how can I implement it immediately, not the next day or the day after? How can I live out these realities? How can I do the coursework that is given? How can I follow through? That way I can benefit immensely from my participation in this place. And then we also invite us to set a daily reminder. So put it on your calendar that we are meeting at 9 p.m. By the mercies of God, we will provide a permanent link tomorrow. And so that permanent link will mean that for all the remaining 30 classes, that we'll use one link for that. So put a permanent reminder. If you can, set the calendar, put it on your calendar today that you reminded maybe 30 minutes before time and another reminder 5 minutes before time. So set your calendar, right, for 9 p.m. Nigeria from now till September the 12th. And then in the course of listening to this or re-listening to this, if you have questions, also send them as comments and then maybe in the WhatsApp group or in any of the platforms where you are on. And then also follow Boqer School at Boqer School across social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and then we are on music streaming platforms. Do well to follow us on social media. And if you are benefiting anything at all from this class, then invite someone when next you're coming. I'm not going to be telling us the amount of money we are spending to teach these 32 classes. It is money in their multiple of millions, and we're making this class free of charge. We have a vision that we want to accomplish. Is to see that this knowledge is multiplied. Is to see that we do away with. So there are higher goals we want to achieve than making money. Not that making money is bad, but we're making these sacrifices, preparing this coursework, researching, cross-referencing, editing the videos, editing the audios, getting the lights ready, getting the camera ready, getting the internet ready. We have to subscribe like 2 or 3 or 4 internet, subscribe on the MiFi, on the HiNet or whatever it is called. Subscribe on the mobile device. You switch networks just to make sure we give us a seamless flow. So my point is this: if after all these efforts we only have 20 people, and then out of 20 people, who knows how many will implement. But so if you're benefiting and deriving any value from this at all, try to invite others to become part of this class. Share our flyers. Once our flyers are out, share our flyers. But just share it on your Twitter, on your WhatsApp, and indeed on all social media platforms. Share the links with people. But then it is not just enough to share, because that's random marketing. Once you hear this class, I think that each and every one of us can picture like 5 or 6 people within our sphere of influence. And this is what we want to do. Write down the names of 5 people you want to bring here. 5. And target 5 people you know that, okay, you need to hear this. When the recordings are ready, forward them the recordings. But when the invites to the class are ready, also invite them to participate in the class. Spread the word. Follow Boqer School, engage our content. When we push these messages out, comment, and if you've gotten any value from what we are doing, comment publicly on your status what you learned from the class. That way people can learn or know that, okay, this class you're inviting them for has something in store for them. So having said this, I'll try to bid us a very warm good evening. for those who are on this side of the hemisphere, and invite us to prepare well for tomorrow. It is going to be a marathon. In fact, tomorrow is when I feel that the class is starting, that everything we've done is to lay the groundwork for tomorrow. I'm so looking forward to tomorrow to teach us on this important topic of dominion and thrones. We're going to be dealing with why good men don't win offices. But we're not dealing with it at a theoretical level. Our goal is to empower people to become all that they've been created to become. So see you around tomorrow. Don't come alone, come with people.